So, Lewis, like the hottest weeks we've had in goodness knows how long. We're cramped up in this room with aircon blazing, and we're going to have a chat for about an hour about growth.
Yeah, good. It's not a bad place to be cooped up with the aircon going, mate. I think we're all right.
Yeah, we could be in worse places.
Yeah, I think my office at home is slightly worse in terms of heat.
Yeah.
Sun blazing all day. This feels relatively cool in comparison,
Yeah, I can already envision the garden office at home.
Yeah.
We've got aircon.
Yes, of course.
I can get it set to a fridge. Tonight, I'm going to take camping beds out there with my kids.
Mate, this is the night to do it, yeah.
They're going to love it. They're going to be like over the moon. And I'm going to be sat there like wrapped up in my duvet as if it's like the dead of winter.
Yeah.
Feeling pretty smart.
I succumbed to buying one of the portable aircon units that I absolutely said, there's no need for that. We only use it a couple of days of the year.
Yeah.
Here I am every night, even with the temperatures down.
Yeah.
Full blazing.
Yeah.
Much to the other half's despair.
You're supposed to sleep in like 16 degrees.
16 to 18 apparently, yeah.
For the best night's sleep, aren't you? Yeah. Which I can understand.
I can understand, yeah.
I sleep better in the winter when it's cold. And you're under the blanket and, you know. Anyway.
What a start, eh? Talking about temperature and air conditioning,
Yeah. Well, I mean, thanks for coming in. This podcast and these conversations I wanted to have, at MOLT, we are all about growth. And shedding what no longer serves in order to develop new training and new learning for companies that's adaptive and alive. And I just thought it'd be great to have a chat about your career, your story, which I obviously know you really well. Super interesting. And probably from as far back as you can remember, you've probably got story after story of where you had to ditch an old way of thinking, an old way of doing something and adapt in order to grow. And so, I'd love to start with the Suada story, right back as far as you're comfortable going.
Yeah, sure.
And let's have it. And then we'll probably go off on some,
we can talk,
some lovely tangents. And then maybe we'll end up back somewhere definitive by the end of the time we've been chatting. So, tell us the story.
So we're coming up to 7 years this year since Suada was initially founded. Yeah. So, crazy. It's like half of my working career, over half of my working career, a quarter of my life has now been spent working in Suada.
That's
so
crazy.
it seems.
Why don't you just in 30 seconds explain what Suada is, and then we'll do the origin story.
Sure. So Suada is a learning management system and a learning platform delivered for long-term retention of information. So we are battling the constant notion that everyone is desperate for attention and we are desperate to give our attention to something. People's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, but we're actually trying to deliver learning that engages the modern workforce. And we do this with a couple of different techniques and a couple of different methodologies of learning. And we're trying to deliver super engaging training that really sticks, that means that people can actually do their job better and have more confidence in doing their job.
Yeah.
So really exciting technology, really brilliant team, really brilliant design, really great features and usability, but essentially trying to battle that corporate e-learning struggle that I and so many others have sat through in my early career. Yeah.
So it's a learning management system.
Learning management system.
Or an LMS. If you know corporate jargon.
LXP. If you know corporate jargon, that's
learning experience platform.
Learning experience platform. Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a mobile app. It's a web app.
Web app. Yeah, we have fully kind of white labeling, very much customization. We're really leaning into kind of a feature-heavy platform now. Lots of customization around look and feel, and actually really tailoring it to your business. We have, very much started as Suada front and center. Now we sit in the background and your brand and your business does the heavy lifting. We just support with the technology. We just supply the technology.
So if I work for a big company and I get that email saying, hey, Ben, you need to do your
mandatory 1 hour of training.
Your mandatory compliance
or
onboarding training, or
all
maybe something a bit more
stuff.
exciting. It might come through Suada.
Absolutely.
So I then might log onto my Suada app and I can go and watch the videos, do the training, do the quizzes. I don't want to spoil your thunder, but do the teach backs.
Do a bit of the teach backs. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Yeah. And I think we're looking at it now, and it's kind of changed so much over the years. Now we're looking at it like it doesn't need to be Suada front and center. It doesn't need to be all about us and the platform and the app. It now just needs to be an enabler. And that's what we're trying to do. Make that journey really seamless. People have been doing learning management systems and e-learning since kind of the early 2000s, really, when it truly started. So, we're very much a variation on a theme, right? We're not doing anything drastically different. We're just trying to provide a much better user experience and learning experience for the end learner.
Yeah, that's cool. Let's go back to school.
Okay.
So what did you do after school?
I went to school locally and then went straight to college with very little idea of where I wanted to go. I've always been kind of creative. I have a I went on to get a degree in television and film production, but kind of media, English, literacy. I was studying quite a lot of applied IT. I was very had quite a techie background without, being able to code or learning the important skills that I wish I did 15 years ago when I was at college and university.
We can all code now, can't we?
Everyone can code now. So
thank you very much, Claude.
Yeah. So I started out there. I was very much focused on. I've been always very entrepreneurial when I was younger. When I was a kid and when I was growing up, I always kind of found a way and was driven by wanting to work for myself. My father and my family have always kind of worked for themselves. Both my brothers worked for themselves. So I think it's always been ingrained into us as a family. And when I was at college and university, I started a production company, as I say, film, television, video production. I used to do all of the local promotional videos for the local stores, little dressmaking stores, little restaurants and cafes. I spent a good chunk of time doing a lot of work, creating little promotional videos. And that kind of really drove me to understand the notion of content being so important in this modern era. So early 2010s, 2012, 2013, when we were just getting to the forefront of social media, Instagram was blowing up, Snapchat had just started. In our generation, that was the biggest thing. And I wanted to be in a profession that kind of leveraged a lot of that. So I went away from the traditional go to school, go to college, university, do accounting, or become, a more traditional career. And I was really trying to lean into more modern careers. That was something that always really engaged me when I was young.
Were you quite academic at school?
Yeah, fairly academic. I think I could have gone either way. I think I had, enough academic talent to be able to go and do something a little bit more traditional. But actually, I think I have a fairly short attention span, and one of those guys that can't tend to sit still, always need to be busy. I'm sure you can probably attest to that, the work we've done the last couple of years. I'm kind of always on and always on the go, and there's always something else. So a kind of big corporate career was never something that really appealed to me, even from a young age.
Yeah, it's usually quite tough though, isn't it? Particularly with parents and teachers, I need to be careful because I'm sat with two creative guys in the room, but like if you are creative, to say to my parents or to say to parents, hey, I don't want to do the academic subject, I want to do the creative thing. Usually it's a bit of a tough conversation. Like, how did you find that?
Mate, do you know what? It was really easy for me. And I think I'm the eldest of three brothers. And I think, as I say, my parents being kind of quite entrepreneurial and having that individual understanding of actually, the world was a very changing place back then as well. And I think they didn't really lean too much into the internet early on. And, we were growing up when the internet was just rising at the peak of its powers. And actually, for me, I was so determined to try and get in somewhere along the line and some way or another into that space and do something that's a little bit more creative and a little bit more forward thinking than the traditional path. It was good. It was fine. They were really supportive. I think I made a decision to stay at home and educate myself at university, local university, as opposed to going away to university. And that was a really big decision for me when I was younger. And I used that time to work alongside my university. So I was doing a lot of this production work. I was working with local businesses. And I found that a really good balance for me early on, because I didn't want to just stay in full-time education until I was kind of 21, 22.
Did you enjoy school?
I did. Yeah, I enjoyed school. I had a great school, college and university, to be honest. I think education, I think a lot of people have it really difficult. I think a lot of people really struggle. I was fortunate enough that I had a really good group of friends and didn't come into too much trouble. And I think, well, not too much anyway, but I was
just the right amount.
Just the right amount, just to keep mum and dad on their toes. I love school and college and had a really good experience. And thankfully a lot of my friendship group from school I'm still friends with now. So I think that's good grounding. Because
there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of like kind of glory stories of entrepreneurs who love to say how they really struggled at school and they hated it and they kicked against the system and they weren't academic, and that's like a glorified story.
Absolutely, yeah.
But actually it's a lot of the business owners I know and entrepreneurs I know, they're like, actually a lot of them did at school and had a great time and more, and some often actually did very well and go on to do good university degrees. And so I think we do like to hear the stories of the dyslexic, like the Richard Bransons, the Alan Sugar, and those are great stories. And it's an amazing example of how the school system maybe sometimes fails those who are maybe entrepreneurial or neurodiverse. But equally, you can have a relatively good time at school and enjoy school for what it is, and then go on and be an entrepreneur as well. What came after school? So college?
Yeah, so I
university?
when I have these conversations and speak to kind of other founders and you know, if I've ever had to do a keynote, I'll often talk about a really key experience in my younger life, and something that I attribute a lot of my, you know, success, quote unquote success, and actual kind of growth is to, I started working for Marks and Spencer's when I was 16 years old, and I was on the foods department, and I was a customer service guy. I worked in customer service. I was stacking the shelves. I was on the tills. I was serving people. And when I was growing up, I was 16, you know, when I got my first job, I struggled a little bit to speak to different demographics and to different people. And I think a lot of people do, especially now, kind of post-COVID, COVID kind of kids that are growing up with limited communication skills. It's something that's a real challenge in society. Yeah. And I attribute a lot of my ability to be able to communicate effectively to my time working at Marks and Spencer's. I worked there for 7 years. Wow. And I had, you know, as you can imagine, all manner of people in there. I had to deal with kind of lots of different challenges, really young. And you know, it's a very entry-level role, right? It wasn't the most stressful job in the world. But I think that role really helped me to be able to speak to, you know, older, more wealthy people, to kind of younger people who, you know, come from different parts of the city or the town, and, you know, actually allowed me to develop my conversation skills, which is something that I believe has really pushed me forward in my career.
Yeah. It's funny, if I ever go to like a shop, Tesco, whatever, my girls who are 6 and 4, but ever since they could talk, you'll go up and you'll be paying for stuff and you just want to get in and get out.
Yeah.
And they're striking up a conversation with the cashier. And the cashiers look at them like, why are you talking to me? Like, you're 4.
Yeah.
And I'm almost like, oh, come on, you know, just be quiet. Like, let's get out. But then actually, in balance, I think it's great that they practice, you know, the art of talking to a stranger and asking how they are, and, you know, being able to just respond to different people, because it's kind of an art. In the, you know, a lot
it's all self-scan tills now, isn't it? And then AirPods in and out.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I force myself. I'm like, I could go and self-serve. I should probably go and have an interaction with another human being. I've just been sat on my own.
I should go and see the gent who's free at the moment.
And they make eye contact and they're like, you're going to use me or are you going to use self-scan?
That was really foundational for me. As I say, I had a really good manager when I was there, and I must talk about the manager that I had. And that was, you know, as a young, very impressionable kid, I was going out, socialising. There was a couple of hungover phone calls saying I might be in today, and like how you treat people and that kind of notion of management in that scenario. I was led by a really great guy who really looked after me in those kind of foundational years of my education, but also my adulthood as well. And actually that was always left an impression on me as to how to act and how to be. And as I say, my communication skills were definitely improved by working there. So
how do you, because I think about this quite a lot, but do you find that there are leaders and managers and bosses you've had, particularly in your early years, that affected you both ways? Or do you feel like you were lucky and just got a series of great leaders in your life?
Yeah, I think, no, you're right. I think there's definitely both ways. I've got experience. I won't go too much into detail because I don't want to get cancelled on the very first podcast. But I think we you know, one of my biggest experiences with different personality types, and personality types is something that I've spent a lot of time studying as I've gotten a little bit older, and understanding how my personality type engages with others. And again, that really helps me with my communication, and something that I've worked on a lot. But I used to really struggle with a certain manager when I felt I knew more than my certain manager. Yeah. Right. I was coming out of university. I was really confident. I had a load of life experiences. You know, even as a young, impressionable kid, I still kind of had that autonomy and confidence that I could do a really good job of whatever I was going after. So I struggled when I felt a bit suffocated. And that's something that I really work on now with our team, is like, we want to give people the freedom to express themselves, both creatively, but also kind of academically and organizationally and strategy wise. And, you know, I never want to limit people to kind of adhere to a structure that has been predetermined by myself or my co-founder or anybody else, because actually that was the most suffocating thing for me in my early career, was saying I need to stay in this box and do this over here, when I felt like if we went in this other direction, there'd be huge amounts of value that I could bring from that. So I think kind of leaning into being open-minded and actually understanding that, you know, in order to do anything, really, you do need a really good team around you, and you need to listen, because, you know, as much as you think that you know what you're doing and you know the direction, other people have got kind of a complete different view of the world, and sometimes that's a better way to go.
Yeah. It's particularly hard when you are younger. You see everything with such enthusiasm.
Yeah.
And you think you know more than you do.
Yeah.
But you have this healthy energy and this like innovative perspective, which is really valuable.
Yeah.
But then you could be sat next to someone who's got 20 years of experience, and they
It's
may have lost
friction.
a bit of that like innovative spark, but they have 20 years of experience, which is hugely valuable. And so there's always this tension between the two.
Yeah.
And you have to know how to get it right, whether you're the guy who's young,
Like,
or
or
the girl
turning
who's young,
into the older guy.
or you're turning into the older guy.
Yeah.
Like, I find it all the time with Hudson behind there, but like I'll be said, over the years, I've learned this, and you just like, I am turning into that older guy.
Yeah. And I absolutely see it from both sides, because I must have been so annoying when I was in my early career. I must have been doing people's head in, because I was that Energizer bunny. I wanted to do loads and loads and go above and beyond and show my worth and prove what I could do.
Yeah.
To the detriment of probably other people, because I was so desperate, so passionate, so hungry to kind of showcase what I could do, that actually that probably wasn't always the right direction. So I think, as I say, with hindsight, it's really easy to look back and think, maybe I was a little bit over the top in my younger days. And I think now, kind of really understanding, the social psychology of how people work as well. Like, it's great to have those people around, absolutely, and we want to kind of allow these green shoots to come up and to grow and to thrive. But actually, also, it does need to be kind of a little bit of direction in order to kind of adhere to the outcomes that we're looking for.
Yeah. So let's go. So university.
Yeah.
And then what
we are getting to Suada. We'll get back to Suada when you talked about it. I started and then came back. But
so what happened after university then?
Yeah, so I finished university again. I was very much kind of geared towards, as I say, television, video, film production. I did lots of work. I worked with Sky. I worked with BBC. I did work with numerous different kind of traditional broadcast media. And I always really realised that's like all of my classmates, all of my peers at university really wanted to go down that route. They were very much, we're going to work for TV, we're going to work in film. And I was very much, I want to work in business. I want to be entrepreneurial. I want to work with big organizations and big conglomerates and do corporate, not necessarily training, but corporate video content. That was kind of always my bag. So I continued this production company all through university. I was very fortunate at university. I was selected for a couple of grants and I won some awards for best business startup at university and, a couple of young entrepreneur awards, which gave me a lot of foundation, gave me capital to invest in equipment and kind of really fast tracked my career. So when I finished university, like alongside what I was doing, I had a bit of a burning desire to learn how to sell, because as you do when you listen to self-help books and you're reading kind of material on personal development and growth, like everything is about selling, right? And that is something that I felt like I didn't really have that skill. So I started working in a telesales role part-time to supplement the production company business. And I think, it was one of those things that I had to kind of swallow my pride a little bit, because I'd kind of been coming out of university, done really well, had a lot of success. I was like going to start my big production company and do my thing. And actually what happens is, we need to just rein it in a little bit and think, I don't have all the answers. And I needed to kind of humble myself a little bit. So I did telesales and I was so desperate to learn how to sell, because I thought it would really kind of do me well in my future career.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the origin story of where Suada started. So I met my co-founder and business partner, Dave Thompson, when he came in to deliver one of
Shout out David
Thompson, one of his world famous sales training sessions, way back in God knows when. But I just remember Dave coming in and giving this session on persuasion and influence, how to persuade, how to influence, how to kind of move people into your direction. I was blown away. And I just thought, how do I stay close to this man? How do I stick with this guy? Because whatever he had, it was so encapsulating, his energy, his aura, how he delivered his session to a young, impressionable guy. That was like the most encapsulated kind of training that I've ever been in. And it actually took me kind of 3 years, 2.5 years to finally quit my job and go and start what is now Suada with David.
So that was 2 or 3 years in telesales.
Yeah, 2 or 3 years in telesales.
Side note, I really believe that young people should do telesales at some point, or some kind of high volume selling.
Yeah.
Like that.
Oh, it's graft.
It's absolutely
it's hard.
Yeah. I did like 6-7 months in a brokerage in London.
Okay.
The as part of my gap year, which was telesales to high net worth, tax efficient investments, and you were. It was like Wolf of Wall Street, but post financial crisis.
No one's got any money.
No one had any cash. But when you're phoning strangers, and like fairly educated, intelligent strangers, because we would be phoning bankers, traders, fund managers, and you're trying to convince them A, to stay on the phone longer than a few seconds, B, to then actually, like have a bit of backwards and forwards over something which in reality they probably know a lot more than you do about, and then convince them to come in for a meeting. Like the amount of rejection. Right? I just remember going to the toilets and just borderline crying in a cubicle, just thinking like, oh my goodness.
But the internal pressure of hitting targets, call volumes and things like that.
The resilience, and also, we learned so much. I worked for a guy, and he was brilliant at this, and there was so much science behind it, and there was scripts, and I remember even him explaining, if you go down at the end of a sentence, that inspires confidence, and it's quite, you are controlling the situation. If you go up at the end of a sentence, that sounds like a question, and it makes you sound unsure. So all of this stuff about making sure that your intonation is going down at the end of sentences, and just the way that you're framing and positioning, and a lot of the stuff.
Right? It's
really powerful. And then you don't realize until you then go and use it the next time without thinking about it too much, and then it works. And but it's actually only through weeks and months of pretty much wanting to cry as like an 18-year-old.
Grafted on the phone.
You then realize, but again, like that is something when you're 16, 17, 18, 19.
So good.
Really good to go out and do a sales role, a customer service role, something where you are forced to talk to lots of people.
It's very good grounding, as you say.
And overcome some difficult situations. So 2-3 years in telesales.
Yeah, so we did the telesales. I actually had I had a big accident. I broke my leg and my ankle, and I was bedbound for about 3 to 4 months. And I remember being sat in bed. I had some some clients on the side I was still doing some production work with. I just started shaping this business that I was working with to do some more creative, more video content, and things were going really well. And then I had this accident where I was stuck in bed, and I just remember thinking every day, like, I don't know if this is where I want to be. Like, I don't know if I'm fulfilling what I should be doing, right? And I have this real internal battle like every day when I was stuck in my bed thinking, I could be doing so much more than this. I should be doing so much more than this. And I felt like I got a little bit comfy. And, I think that's really easy. And I think people don't talk about that. Like, I think people, you're often told to change careers and chop and change and do a couple of years here and then grow. And I think that's really good advice. But I think that's also really difficult sometimes, depending on your kind of personality type. It's actually really easy to settle as well, and to kind of get stuck in a bit of a rut. And sometimes it's easier to, keep doing what you're doing and keep hoping rather than actually taking action. And I came up with a little bit of a plan as to what am I going to do with my career, my life, and my direction of travel when I was stuck in bed. And I just remember thinking about Dave and what he was trying to do. And I reached out and we had a little bit of back and forth, and we ended up meeting up on a couple of occasions. I drove up to him to see him in Wellingborough where he was based, and we kind of came together and decided that, Dave was richly kind of experienced in sales. He'd done sales his whole career. He just exited his business. He'd just been trained personally by Dr. Robert Cialdini, who is the writer of the book Influence. He worked with Barack Obama in 2008.
Mega.
Huge kind of authority on the topic.
And lots of people would quote that as one of the best books for personal development they've ever read.
Absolutely, in terms of kind of, not just sales, but in personal communication. And Cialdini is really widely quoted. And Dave was one of 6 or 7 people in the world coached personally by him. And where we kind of came together was, I said, well, why don't we build all of your 30 years of knowledge into a sales training course that we can take to market and we can sell to people. I know how to produce it, I know how to create the content, and we can go out and sell to people. And I said, if you want to get this going and we really want to give this a go, I'll quit my job and I'll come and work for you and we'll work together.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, I remember being so scared to kind of send that text message, send that email, and thinking, so much unknown. There's a lot that could go wrong here. I've got quite a stable career. You know what I mean? There was a lot that could happen. And I did that, and Dave and I started working together, and I was so excited. I remember the first day I went up to meet him, the first day we were going to work on this project. I had all my ideas in my head, what we were going to shoot, what we were going to create, the content we were going to drive. And he sat me down and he said, forget the camera, forget your laptop. We need to learn. You need to learn. And we did a month, 6 weeks, probably 3 months in total, I didn't even pick up a camera. I didn't do anything other than learn. And Dave took me through his sales process, took me through influence, persuasion, negotiation, closing, opening, neurolinguistic pathways, like so much foundational sales training, and then made me teach it back. And this was my first notion and understanding of why teaching back is so important. And the reason I'm mentioning it is foundational to Suada today. It is absolutely foundational to what we do. It's our key unique selling point that no other technology has got right now. And by teaching something back, the art of teaching back is not only allowing you to help learn, but it's helping you retain and also building confidence. So when you teach something back, your self-image begins to get a little bit re-engineered, and you start to think, oh, I know what I'm talking about now. I feel like I can use this in a conversation. So I spent the early weeks and months of Suada not doing anything I think I was going to do, getting grilled and grafted by Dave to do learning on topics that I'd never even dreamed about learning about. And that's where we started. That was where we started back 7 years ago now. I spent a lot of time doing that, and yeah, I'm sure we'll go on to it, but there have been so many different kind of pivots and directions of travel that we've taken during that time.
Yeah. And I'm sure Dave probably won't mind us talking about this, but again, in that first kind of 6 months, you've come in as the new guy, all innovative, full of ideas, and he's probably like, just calm yourself. Mate, I know what I'm doing.
We had many of those conversations.
Yeah.
I took down a peg or two, a few. Yeah, and do you know what, Dave? We had a few clashes early on in our early days, and I think finding ways of working, it was kind of, he probably felt like he had this limpet attached to him, just like trying to feed off him. And I did get to that point where I was so desperate to learn from him, all of his experiences and everything he did. And something that he's always ingrained in me is personal development and learning for yourself. And you know, Dave's one of these guys that will spend the money to go and see Butch Harmon because Butch is the best golf coach in the world, and he's coached Tiger, so I want to get coached by Butch. And that is his whole ethos and mentality, and it really has rubbed down and rubbed on me, because I feel that same connection to personal development and training, and it's something that I actually spend a lot of time in my own journey is spending time educating myself in a whole manner of different areas. But yeah, early on, Dave and I, we butted heads a few times. We had different ideas. I was probably that annoying little puppy in the corner that won't stop shutting up, won't stop clawing at him.
So how obviously now you are co-founder.
We are.
You run the business alongside Dave, and no one would know that there was this kind of apprentice protege thing. So how did it transition from you were the limpet, begging him to get involved?
Give me some attention.
And now, he kind of lets you run the thing.
Yeah, so we had a bit of a shift, and there was, when we started, as I say, we started out as a sales training company. We wanted to build a sales course that we would take to market, sell to businesses, sell to individuals. That was the whole goal of the company, right? Really straightforward. The company was called Influence Business. Before it was Suada, we had Influence Business. That was the name of the company. And we had some success early on, and some really good kind of pilots and case studies where we worked with businesses, with small sales teams. We worked with kind of individuals, and we're really focused on delivering this sales training. But what we found was, in order to deliver it at scale, like Dave couldn't be in two places at once. And when Dave's diary was booked up and I was there filming, there wasn't anything more that Dave could do other than do the training on that day. So we knew that we needed to kind of create some technology or utilize technology to deliver it. So we looked at LMSs on the marketplace to deliver our course, right? We built out the course. We searched many different learning management systems. We trialed multiple different learning management systems. But what we found was the training that was being delivered wasn't getting retained. It wasn't getting embedded. The change management inside of the organization wasn't happening. Yeah. And ultimately, people were forgetting it. People weren't actually learning it. And the sales directors and the head of sales were coming up and say, yeah, your workshop was great, but no one's using it. And we're 2 months down the line and no one's doing it. How do you make it stick? Mm-hmm. So that's when we started to pivot to actually, there is no technology on the market right now that can deliver this learning experience that we wanted. And there's a story that sits behind this that I won't go into from Dave and his business as to how this methodology really works. And, you must get Dave on here at some stage to tell his story. But this is based in evidence, right? This isn't just kind of Dave's good ideas or Louie's good ideas. And we really thought that we needed to build the technology to deliver learning in this way at scale, but being able to kind of do it so it will automate multiple different businesses, multiple different use cases at one time. So we went and decided that we would essentially build a technology business, a software business, a SaaS business, as opposed to a traditional sales training business.
Yeah.
That was the pivot point.
So that was build the app.
Build the app. Yeah, build the app. And that led to some challenges, as you can imagine. I have no software experience or software background. Dave has even less software experience than I do. And we started out with a development team in India. And we had a really good UX and UI guy, I think is Israeli guy called Eli. And I worked really closely with him. Dave had a really good vision for what the prototype was going to be. And I started in this more operational role of, okay, Dave's got the idea of what he wants to build. How do I make it happen? So transitioning from videographer, editor, cameraman to, okay, now I need to manage people and project manage. Yeah, product owner, absolutely, yeah. We started out in India. We did 18 months development in India, probably around 400 grams worth of development in India. And when we went to put it into the App Store, they said the code was no good and it was never going to get approved by Apple or Google.
No way.
Yeah. So we had some difficult conversations and a very tough time when we paused and just kind of said, look, are we going to go again? Like we've spent all of this time and there was an element of naivety on our side. We absolutely should have checked that, what they were showing us wasn't just smoke and mirrors. It looked great. The UX and UI looked brilliant. The app looked amazing. We were really happy with the direction of travel.
Yeah.
But it wasn't coded and it wasn't built in the right way. We didn't have the right team in place. We didn't have the right CTO in place. So when we had a code review, we were told this was never gonna go anywhere. And like that was probably the lowest point of our journey so far. Me personally, I just kind of felt, this has been a huge kind of effort over the last 18 months to get an MVP ready to market. And, probably we had an MVP that we were showing clients and talking to people and getting excited before that. But this was kind of first full-scale production. So Dave and I, we talked kind of a lot about what's next and do we go again and is this right? And, something that I'll always commend him for is his resilience and the drive that he has to just keep going and relentless kind of pursuit of the best and better than what he's doing right now. And it's his hunger, even kind of the career that he's been through is so inspiring and was so inspiring to me that actually at that stage, I needed to be better. I needed to level myself up and if we're going to do this again, I can't make the same mistakes that I've been making for the last however long.
Yeah.
So we took that time to reset and
there is a common denominator that comes out with a lot of successful entrepreneurs, well, a lot of successful people generally, but that resilience is such I hear it all the time and you can't escape it, but successful entrepreneurs usually have a streak of resilience of they get knocked down, they go again, they get knocked down, they go again. And it's just their success is basically years and years of persisting and being resilient when others would have maybe given up or, taken defeat. I mean, we'll get Dave down here at some point and have a big old chat with him. But like Dave's whole story, like his life is just
resilience
full of resilience. But that, that doesn't surprise me. But it must have been quite different for you, as in the first time maybe taking such a... I mean, obviously you had your, that time in where you damaged your leg.
But it wasn't really the same. I always had quite a privileged, sheltered lifestyle.
Yeah, but I guess first big like career, moment of resilience.
I wobbled like bad. Like I was like, I'm out, I'm going to do something else and I'm going to find another job. I honestly had all of those thoughts.
Yeah.
And then you
What made you stick then?
I think, like I've been, one of the biggest things that I feel about myself is that I'm a really loyal person. And Dave gave me that opportunity when I was a young kid and probably didn't really deserve to work with somebody of his caliber at the level and time I was in my career. And I told him on day one that I'll stick with him and I'll be loyal to him because if you show the trust in me, then I promise you I'll deliver.
Yeah.
And I did feel that innate loyalty to Dave and like I still felt that same trust and excitement of working with him that I did when I first kind of started, when I quit my job and worked with him.
Yeah.
And I still believed in the mission. I still very much believed in the goal. Like I think at that stage, we even looked again for platforms that were on the market that was doing the same sort of thing because we still had this really nicely packaged sales training that really did do a great job, that had great case studies. We'd done, good revenue in selling that. We had a product. We just didn't have a fit for that product to scale it. So we did go back to the market. We did find out what was out there. And again, we were disappointed there was nothing out there. And I think that really did kind of spur us on to go again. And we did it properly. I did a course in agile project management. I did, read all the Scrum Master books. I did everything properly. I spent so much time learning how to be better as a product owner, as a founder of a technology business, as an operations director, to actually give myself and give the business the best chance to succeed.
Yeah.
And that bit there was kind of a commitment that I made, not just to myself, but to Dave as well, that if we are to go again, if we are to kind of lace our boots up and try again, I mean, we must, do our best to, actually educate ourselves properly into what we're getting into, and not try and hurry a product to market, not try and take shortcuts, because actually, look where that got us in the first instance,
So the code base got rejected.
Codebase got rejected.
What happened then after that?
So we had 3 external code reviews, and it's kind of best practice when you're, working with the development team and somebody, they're saying, oh, that we can't go to market. You get code reviews. This was actually something that was, suggested to us. And one of the guys that delivered the code review was a guy called Becca Tomashvili. Becca Tomashvili is now our CTO.
Shout out Becca.
Shout out Becca. Genuinely one of the kindest, smartest, most intelligent, driven individuals I've ever met. Started, scaled, sold multiple startups from his base in Tbilisi in Georgia. Really, really switched on guy. And he did a code review for us. And in that moment, what he said to us, he was like, the code's rubbish, but I know how to fix it.
Yeah.
And that really, again, the other guy's just like, here's your report, here's why it's not very good. Becca was, here's your report and here's why, and here's how I can help.
Yeah.
And I remember, funny, we had a big problem. One of our big things in the mobile app when we were building it the first time was around streaming and low latency streaming, because everyone wants videos that don't buffer, right? One a big bugbear for me with my background is I don't like seeing videos buffer, and there's a million different reasons why a video may buffer.
Yeah.
And I used to get so frustrated in our prototype that the videos would buffer.
Yeah.
And Becca basically came up with a way to use AWS service to deliver low latency streaming. So when you don't have any signal, your video plays in a lower resolution, but it still streams without buffering.
Yeah.
And he did that little task in around about 3 weeks. And I remember Dave and I had the conversation, like, this guy's good. Like, this guy's got it. Like, he absolutely gets it.
Yeah.
And we're 5 years down the road now from there. So.
Isn't that such a good character trait to have? Like, when someone, like, A, to be able to call out something that's not great, but then to straight away follow up with,
I
know
how to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You live to work with those people.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, it's been a dream.
that's not great, but I know how to solve it.
Yeah.
This is broken, but I know how to fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also, Hudson, I don't know if you were old enough to remember this, but like there was a time when you'd be satisfied with something buffering within a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Literally. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Whereas now, if it's not buffering
If it's
for like
not instant,
3 seconds, you are gone.
Yeah, you're gone.
Like, you're on the train.
But you're back to attention, right? You're back to attention
Yeah.
spans and people's attention. And,
Yeah.
People don't want to be doing learning and training at the best of times. Yeah. If you look at your corporate life, like a lot of it's compliance, a lot of it's mandatory. So if we can't even get the video to play, what chance have we got of engaging with people?
That's such an easy. I couldn't do the training.
Yeah.
It took too long to buffer. It wouldn't load. Sorry, I'll try again next week.
So that was the biggest challenge I think we've had, and there's been so many more over the time. I mean, we worked through COVID. I remember just working relentlessly from COVID whilst everyone else was on kind of leave and taking time out, and all these people in corporate roles were working remote or had time off. And COVID was when we just started working with Becca and the team. So we were really head down to kind of get this out, and it was great because it gave me a kind of a drive and something to do during that period. But actually, I remember feeling so overwhelmed. You didn't know about the, geopolitical situation. You didn't know about what was going on in the world. There was so much uncertainty. There was uncertainty around the business, about, the direction of travel for us. And I just remember thinking, like, I just need to work. I just need to keep my head down.
Yeah.
And I used to sit at that dining room table in my living room during COVID, kind of morning till night, and just get my head down and try and make each day, try and do something each day that was going to have a positive effect on the next day. And it really was day by day back then. There was no kind of big strategy, lateral thinking. It was very much day by day.
Yeah.
How can we make kind of incremental improvements to what we're trying to build to essentially get to the end goal?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time before founding MOLT in corporates where strategy is really important and planning was often quarterly.
Yeah.
Anywhere between kind of 2 weekly and quarterly and annual, that was really key. And then I remember at some point early this year, I heard this statement through, I can't remember whose podcast it was, but someone was talking about the best business people, the best leaders are really good on 2 time frames. They're really good on the 10+ year time frame.
Yeah.
And they're really good on the 1 hour time frame.
Yeah.
And that for me was like,
Yeah.
I just was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Like the 10-year time frame being, am I clear on the vision, the direction, you know, like what's going to keep me going, you know, compass wise in that right direction. And also like, you know, what do I kind of value in terms of like my personal beliefs, my personal measures of success, like that stuff won't really change. Yeah. And then the 1 hour time frame is what can I get done in the next hour? Sure. What can I execute on like right now?
Yeah.
And I remember them explaining everything in between starts to take care of itself.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow. I mean, don't get me wrong. There is obviously lots of benefits. Lots of benefits in sprints, quarterly kind of cycles, you know, annual cycles. But it's so easy to get hung up on that stuff when actually like just hearing you talk about the day by day, like so much of it is just
in front of you,
day at a time, day at a time. What can I get done today? What can I get done in the next hour? What can I execute on right now?
Yeah.
And the months start to take care of themselves.
Yeah, it's a really good observation. And I think that, especially during COVID, especially when there was a lot of uncertainty, it was very much like, you know, we know what the big goal is, right? Create a platform and take it to market.
Yeah.
So we don't need, you know, of course we had sprints and we had teams and project management and, you know, that all is fine. But for me, it was like, what can I do every single day that's just going to make us a little bit closer towards this goal?
Yeah.
And there was loads of like, you know, contributing factors to that from a team perspective, but also from kind of a client perspective as well.
Yeah.
And I think a big shift for me was when we first got into the App Store and we started to attract kind of clients for this sales training that we were building, we started to recognize that, you know, features were led by client feedback as opposed to our ideology of the app and what we needed to do, and Becca's ideas and Dave's ideas and Lewie's ideas as to what we wanted. And that's when we started to shift the direction of travel a little bit. And I think there's always, you know, now looking back on it, like, we probably did too much for the clients. We probably went overboard because we were so keen to keep them happy. You know, now I'm like, well, we didn't need that and we shouldn't have done that. But you learn, of course, and you grow, and there's, you know, in those early days, you're so excited to say to a client, we built this feature especially for you guys, and how great is this? And, you know, only to hope that they stay and, you know, pay you a little bit more money a little bit longer. Yeah, that was all part of it.
So the app did eventually go live in the App Store.
The app went live in the App Store. I can't remember the exact time frame, but it was early on in the year. We went in. We were mobile only for a long time, and this was something that I was really passionate about, right? Corporate learning, and people were shifting to. Again, I'll go back to my time at M&S. When I had to do my fire safety training at M&S, I used to come off the shop floor in the food hall, have to be marched upstairs to the office by the dining hall, sit in a little cubicle on a computer for an hour and watch fire, health and safety, manual handling training, tick a spreadsheet, like tick a box to say I've done the training, and then go back to the food hall. And that is people's experience of a lot of corporate training, especially in more retail and manufacturing roles. Like, there isn't anything that's engaging about that in the slightest. So for me, like that, when I was thinking about that and thinking about how we were delivering that, actually driving towards a mobile experience, which is people have their phones on them more than ever before, right? And you know, we want to make this learning experience enjoyable. We want it to make it familiar. We want people to open it up and it looks like LinkedIn, it looks like Instagram, like TikTok. People can use it intuitively rather than having to go to kind of some crusty old legacy LMS and sit through this, click next, move down here, shuffle over here, do a quiz question, watch a video. And we've all done it. We all know what that's like. And actually that's not inspiring, you know.
And we've had lots of discussions because there's a couple of things which you guys really hold to. One is, so you do have a web app, but you've always been, you do now, but you've always been mobile first. The other is, you don't do SCORM content, or generally speaking, you don't do SCORM content. Explain, number one, what is SCORM content, and number two, why you've landed with that view on SCORM content.
I'm smirking because we have recently developed the feature to take SCORM content, but it's been a stance of ours for a little while. That so SCORM content is essentially packaged up content that traditional e-learning is delivered in. So whether that's Rise or Articulate, or way back when was a series of PowerPoint slides that made up e-learning with a voiceover. That was where kind of SCORM content. So SCORM is essentially a packaged up file type that delivers a linear journey. Very much.
So that's where you click next. It gives you a multiple choice.
Absolutely, yeah. We were dead against that, right? Because I don't want to learn in that way. And I think thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people recognize that that's not that's not kind of conducive to the learning outcomes that a lot of businesses are trying to drive.
Yeah.
So we were very much against that for a long period of time. And, you know, I'm still against it. But what I also recognize as we get on a bit older and as the app's got a little bit more mature, that a lot of businesses have hours and hours and years of this content. And it's too big a jump for them to go to this new, modern, engaging, MOLT style content.
Yeah.
You know, we really believe that that's the future of education. That's the future of corporate training. And, you know, we will continue to bang that drum for a long, long time. But there is still this kind of transition period. So
and I think we would probably be in agreement in saying that the format of SCORM, which is that click next, it's like a fairly definitive journey.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong in theory with that kind of file type.
There's nothing wrong with the file type.
But it's just that often comes with a cartoon
it's
that
the
looks like 2002.
Yeah.
Someone, you know, cartoon figure walking along.
Tom and Jerry. And
and it takes about half an hour to get through it when it should be done in like 2 minutes. So there's nothing wrong with SCORM.
There's nothing wrong with the content type, absolutely not. And I think, as I say, we've now pivoted to be able to accept that content. And again, just because it broadens our horizons in terms of working with new clients and new opportunities whilst they transition to this newer.
And you're right in that a lot of companies might have decades of training built at SCORM.
Hours and
so you need to go through the process of helping them revitalize that, modernize it.
Yeah, and we had to swallow our pride a little bit with that one. It's something that I was so against for so long, and actually, you know, we were already seeing the kind of fruits of our labor of actually building that functionality and having that into the platform. It took a little while to integrate it, but yeah, no, it's an important kind of step in the journey for modernizing. And the businesses that are really succeeding, the ones that are leaning into kind of what you and I are doing now and building this super engaging training content delivered on a super engaging platform, the businesses that are leaning into it are getting the benefits a lot quicker than the businesses who are kind of, you know, holding back a little bit and saying we need this transition period to kind of grow and to go into the next step.
Yeah.
But actually, there's a lot more of those businesses and these really innovative businesses over here.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about the 1 or 2% over here, whereas 98% of businesses are here. So we can't shut off that whole side of the market by saying, look, we don't deal with your content type. We're only focused here.
Yeah.
It just shuts down so much of the market to us. So
and just because for anyone who's watching who's in like an L&D role or in a leadership role where they have to care about stuff, have you noticed anything from the last few years, obviously working with lots of different companies? Have you noticed anything that actually, if you could give some advice to an L&D leader or a leader who's responsible for training and upskilling in a business, like what do the successful companies do to really train and upskill at scale well? Like what kind of decisions do they make? How do they approach it? Do they make decisions fast? How do they empower their people? Like, is there anything you've seen trend-wise?
How long have you got? Yeah. No, look, I think there's a million things, right? And this is kind of the never-ending story that there's a constant evolution of what this looks like, and the finish line just keeps moving and moving, organizational wise, based on trends, based on kind of content that's out there in the big wide world, based on kind of the social climate and how people are engaging with smartphones, with social media platforms. But one of the big things that I actually see now is learning that's driving business outcomes as opposed to just learning outcomes. And you and I talk about this quite a lot, right? Learning in the traditional sense, and a lot of the businesses that I've worked with, and I'm only speaking from personal experiences, learning has been created for the sake of delivering the learning, right? And there's only, you know, a small percentage of businesses that we've worked with in the past that actually are trying to drive business outcomes. A lot of it is compliance, which is fine, and that's tick box, and we get that. But a lot of it's onboarding training that, you know, they don't know how to deal with new starters that come in, so put them through this training course, because that's what businesses do, right? You come in, you have a new starter, they go through this training. Yeah. Kill a bit of time in the first 2 weeks whilst we get settled. And, you know, there is so much of that I've seen, and it's not really necessarily mapping to the business outcomes that the kind of the role needs or the overall direction of travel of that business. So I think the shift that we're seeing now that we're working with some more forward-thinking clients is, what's big picture? Like, what are we trying to get to here? Why are we working on this? Why are we delivering training in this way? And, you know, we can talk about a little bit about some of the projects that we've worked on recently together. Huge scale and huge kind of number of people, all with one goal. How do you add credibility and how do you add knowledge around a specific subject at scale? And I think, you know, we're biased, of course. The way that we deliver training, as I say, really is focused on the practical application. We want people to be able to 3 months down the line, remember what they did in that training session and actually be able to apply it. Whether they're a salesperson on the phone, whether they're an engineer that is using Claude Code and they've been taught AI, engineering and prompt writing, or whether they're, in whatever field it is, it's about the practical application of the training.
Yeah.
And if we look at a lot of kind of our feedback and our case studies and our testimonials, I always hope that they're going to say, the platform was really slick and really nice and great UX and UI, but it's always, I remembered my training and I actually used this 6 months down the line, and this really suited my way I like to learn, and I was able to refresh because I could check out my phone. That's what we're getting, and that's great because that's outcome driven rather than process driven.
Yeah.
So that's,
you want them to give you a pat on the back for like, that little feature that you
that
spent ages coding.
No one cares, but they want the outcome, right?
So organizations doing this well, they are really good at mapping the learner outcome to the business outcome.
Yeah, that would be my big takeaway with what we're seeing recently. They're mapping the learning and they're building the learning for the business outcomes rather than just building the learning for the sake of building learning, or because they need a training course to satisfy an audit trail or compliance trail, whatever it is. They're building it because they need their staff to be empowered to know this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's a great, not all companies have the luxury of doing that, right? And I'm not naive enough to think that everyone has got time to focus on L&D, and I recognize where it sits in the wider company structure in terms of priority. But for me, it's something that we've seen over the years that if you get this right, not only do you kind of increase capability and uplift capability inside of the organization, but you increase the culture, right? People start learning from one another. We really focus on peer-to-peer social learning element. And what that does is when people are in an office together and somebody's had to teach something back, and I've seen Hudson's video this morning on how to, close a conversation when I'm pitching to a client, and I think I could use something like that. That's, what he said there was a really nice little snippet. And then I'm on the phone and I'm using that little snippet that I learned from my peer.
Yeah.
That's when the culture shifts.
Yeah.
And people start to become engaged and empowered by one another.
Yeah.
And that's when true learning is really happening.
Yeah. So just for the benefit of anyone who's listening who hasn't used Suada, the teach back feature is one of the key features that certainly got us excited when we first started partnering with you guys. And it's the idea that I do a piece of learning, so I watch some videos, I do the quiz, I do all that kind of stuff that you'd expect to do. But then at the end of the module, it says, hey, Ben, can you take a selfie video and do a 2 to 5 minute selfie video, teach back what you've learned, and then I do the recording and I send it to my tutor or my manager, whoever it is, or now even an AI tutor.
Yeah.
And they can actually check back and see, have you learned what you said you've learned?
Yeah.
And I remember, so that's the feature, but I remember when it came to life with me, we were using this with a client and I was getting these teach back videos, and someone from the team had sent me a teach back video, and I could tell within about 5 seconds they were reading from a script that like ChatGPT had generated for them.
Sure, yeah.
And it was like, there was no hiding. It was like blah, 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 blah. And I had this moment and I was like, oh, do I call them out or do I just let it slide? And so I called them out and said, I'm really sorry. I can tell you just reading from ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Like we had a great relationship. So it's easy to kind of, make
Call
it a little
them
bit
out,
lighthearted, call them out.
Yeah.
And I said, I want to hear it in your own words.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be perfect, but I want to hear your take on it, how you understood the content, how you would apply it in your life. And then I got this reply and they were like, haha, you caught me. Fair enough. And then the next video they sent back was
really good.
Really great. Really great. And so I think it did a couple of things. Like I was able to verify they'd actually understood the content and applied it in their own words to their team, to their situation. But also there was some rapport building there, which in a classroom, right, when you have a teacher or a tutor or whoever who is teaching you and there's 10 of you or 15, like you build some natural rapport. And there is actually a lot to be said for that because it keeps you attentive.
And it's really hard to do that virtually, right?
Yeah,
it's
or
really, really hard to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of get away with it in virtual
Zoom
classrooms
Teams and stuff like that, yeah.
But, people turn their camera off and it's hard to reach through and say turn your camera. But I always remember I had my French teacher at school, Mrs. MOLT or Madame MOLT, and she put the fear of God into you because you knew at any point she might call on you to stand up,
speak French,
repeat back in French. And so you did not mess around because
I
just don't want to look stupid in front of all my friends. And so But like,
that's a big element.
Yeah. And
That
it was
social fear and pressure of doing a good job.
Yeah. And it's not like, social fear sounds bad, but it's actually kind of healthy to like,
super healthy.
I've got a peer group, and in a workspace, like schools maybe it's a little bit different, but in a workspace, you're depending on your team around you to perform well so that you can achieve goals together. So actually there's a healthy peer
it's almost a bit
pressure.
of gamification as well.
Yeah, gamification, that kind of peer pressure of I don't want to let you down. I want to learn from you. I want to hear what you've got to say. And I equally, vice versa. So the teach back function was brilliant because all of a sudden you get a news feed full of learners where they're saying, oh, I've just seen your teach back and I'd never thought about it that way.
Sure.
And you'd see comments start appearing where they'd say, let's have a chat about this offline because I've got an idea of what we can do in this project, in relation to that. So that was why I really loved the teach back feature and why we started working together more and more on it.
There's a lot of, sorry to jump in, there's a lot of, I don't want to spend too much time here, but there's a lot of behavioural science and behavioural economics that sit behind this teach back methodology. This isn't new. We're working on the basis of Richard Feynman's ideology around if you truly know something, you should be able to teach it back in your own words. And he's a Nobel Prize winning philosopher and psychologist that goes back many, many years. And actually, we've built on that ideology, and we now work with a guy called Professor Dean Mobbs, and he's our chief science officer at Suada, and he works at Caltech in America. We went over to California and spent some time with Dean, and he kind of validated our whole pedagogy of learning and that learning journey. And one of the things that he said that was really, really important and stuck with me is, we know that teaching back helps to wire the neural pathways in your brain so you can cognitively, it gives you a better chance of remembering it when, by teaching it back. We know that's the case, and that's really, really powerful. But the other part of the brain that lights up is when you feel an element of social pressure to do a good job because your video is getting shared in your cohort, and it might be only 5 people, it might be 3 people, it might be 10 people in your cohort. But if you've got to deliver a very short presentation, and that could be pen and paper with some icons, that could be images, that could be a PowerPoint deck, anything that you've got to deliver in front of your peers, there is an element of social pressure of you wanting to do a good job.
Yeah.
And actually, that lights up a different receptor in your brain and it gets you even more engaged. And it kind of snaps you out of this repetitive cycle of click next training, click this answer, doesn't matter if I get it wrong, click this, doesn't matter if I get this one wrong, oh, I'll tick the box, so I've done it.
Yeah.
It's about kind of that pattern interrupt that we're trying to achieve, where all of a sudden I think I need to engage with this and I need to actually do a good job and I need to focus, because very quickly you can get to the end of the module and think, oh, I don't know what I've just learned, or I now need to teach this back and I'm not sure. So it's just little things that are encouraging that behavior, and all that does, and everything that we're trying to do with that, is drive the outcomes, and that's business outcomes, and that's better performance, it's better retention of information. But all of that leads to better analytics, better data, better reporting, better insights. So the audit trail from the admin side, if you're the manager, if you're the head of L&D, if you're the CEO, you can look at your organization and you can say, wow, hasn't Jimmy done a good job this month on learning about sales training? Or isn't kind of, this person's, way of describing this challenge in work, or the way that they've learned this, really engaging, and it becomes a little bit of a talent finder. You start spotting talent inside of your organization that you wouldn't have ordinarily seen. So it's a really unique feature, and it's something that we still pride ourselves on, but actually for us always is one of the big drivers with the clients and one of their favorite features.
Yeah. So what's the plans for Suada moving forward? So we've covered the origin story. We've spoken a little about some of the really cool features of Suada. And so what's happening with Suada now? Where are you guys going for the next couple of years?
I think like growth always, right? We are always trying to grow. We've partnered with great organizations, yourself, with Adaptivate, and where we see now is kind of, there's a little bit of a shift in and a pivot in our direction of travel in terms of what we're delivering, right? We could very easily, and we very much went into the kind of, we are an LMS and we will rival the other LMSs that are in the market. That's a really difficult game to play unless you're Cornerstone or you're Decebo and you've got kind of private equity funded or Silicon Valley funded businesses with tons of cash behind them that can have 100 grand stands at every roadshow and every event. We're not that guy, those guys, and we're kind of not trying to compete in that space. What we're seeing now is more on a kind of project by project basis, how learning with us and learning this way can actually drive such better outcomes for your organization in terms of retention, in terms of individual knowledge, but also, as I say, reporting, data, analytics, ease of use. Once we get people kind of bought in, once we get pilots that are happening and people see the output, then it's really easy to move to the next step. And I think we made a big mistake by trying to go after the big fish straight away. Let us come in and replace your LMS. I think, the last kind of couple of years, we probably weren't ready to do that. We probably didn't have the case studies. We probably didn't have the testimonials. We didn't have the use cases of actually delivering this at scale to kind of thousands of learners like we do now. I think we've just ticked over 500,000 individual lesson watches in the last kind of 2 years. So like huge volumes of numbers now, but we're seeing more kind of global application and global interest, which is great in different regions. And again, something we've always been able to pride ourselves on is to be able to be delivered in any language, in any jurisdiction, in any industry. It's almost content agnostic now. We started off as sales training. We were very much focused on driving sales training. We realized, Dave and I, very quickly that the platform was good enough to deliver content that sat outside of sales, that wasn't just sales training. Any organization could put any content on the platform, and our methodology and our pedagogy of how we teach, how we learn, and the journey that a user goes through actually is applicable, and it doesn't matter what the content is.
Yeah.
So in a roundabout way, I guess the answer to your question is continued growth, more conversations. We're driving kind of more use cases, more businesses, more users on the platform, better features, better functionality. We've got tons coming up, as I say, around using AI within Suada to elevate learning experiences, to make admin experiences even better, to drive better user experience in the platform. And I think what we want to see is ultimately those lovely emails that you get at the end of the project from the project lead that say, this has been a pleasure working with you guys, and I cannot believe how we used to do this compared to how we are now. Yeah. And that is something that I take so much pride on, and something that I know, you've been involved in projects where we've seen that time and time again. Yeah. So I think continued growth. I think there's certainly more that we can do. I'd like to do some more marketing efforts. I'd like to do some more content creation. I've always had a passion, as you know, for content creation, and it's something that I've had to step away from for a number of years whilst doing the operational side of the business. But yeah, hopefully we'll spend a bit more time doing that as well. Yeah,
cool. And going back to you personally, because what I find interesting, like all through your career, a lot of the really successful progressions are actually as the result of maybe a setback or a pivot, or how do you ensure that you continue growing in the next couple of years as an individual, as a co-founder, as a COO, as Lewie?
Yeah, I think for me, just trying to take a little bit more time to balance the personal side. I think I ran into a bit of a trap of doing what kind of a lot of people our age that are entrepreneurial do, which is let's try and outwork everyone, and let's try and be the busiest person in the room, and let's try and always be doing the most. And I'm starting to realize now that that's not always the best place to be. I think, my other half and I, we're getting married next year. I'm going to start thinking about a family. I've kind of put all of that on the back burner for the last 7 years whilst I've focused on the business. And I've spent so much time promising myself, when the business is successful, we'll do all of that. We'll go and get the house we want. We'll go and have the wedding we want. We'll have the family that we want. And I took a bit of time to realize that isn't ever promised, right? And that's not ever something that's guaranteed. And, I can't let my life I can't let the business get in the way of my life. And I need to make sure that I'm making these decisions for me and my family and my future, as opposed to just what I think's right in the moment for the business. Yeah. And I think my personality and, the time spent learning about personality types, I've understood myself a lot better, especially over the last kind of year to 18 months, that sometimes I do need to take a little step back. Sometimes I do need to think a little bit more strategically and not be so impulsive in terms of decision making, and not try and run. And Dave has this saying all the time, and it's like, don't try and boil the ocean. And that's, if that's something to sum me up, I will always try and boil the ocean. Like, how can we do everything at once, instantly? Yeah. And as I get a little bit older and as I get a bit further down my kind of founder journey, I'm realizing that that's not always the be all and end all.
Yeah. Have you got any habits in your daily routine or your weekly routine?
I meditate. I meditate in the mornings. Again, something that I started doing in COVID. So, and it's not really like religious. I don't do it every single morning at a certain time, but I'll often try and find a quiet kind of 10, 15 minutes to have a bit of time. And I think it just helps to kind of center me a little bit. I tend to make better decisions and more informed decisions after I do that.
Yeah.
I'm a big advocate of the walking meeting. I know it's a little bit like corporate bollocks or whatever it is. Sorry, I had to swear in, but it sounds a little bit jargony. But, for me, actually just kind of getting out and having a little wander. We're so lucky and so blessed. I live by the sea. I've got the sea, 10-minute walk away. I can take my AirPods. I can have a conversation. I can do a lot of thinking. Sat in my office, at the laptop, all hours of the day, early mornings, late at night, different time zones, working with our team in Tbilisi, working with team in Australia, team in America. There is challenges to that. Yeah. And I think it's very easy to fall into them habits, especially, as I say, without any children and not having anything to define any sort of routines. The routines are built by myself and my partner. So that's, I think just spending a little bit of time to step away from the grind and realizing that actually being busy all the time just makes you a busy fool.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. The walking one's interesting. I really like that, and I'm probably going to get shot down by certain personality types. But I think for men in particular, there is something about you have to do stuff together. Blokes will find something to do, and in the process of doing something, you'll have the conversation. Yeah. Whereas I think women can be better at sitting down with a face-to-face, and that's the focus.
I get that.
That's why we just go and play golf for hours. Like 4 hours of focusing on hitting a tiny white ball, and you will probably have some of the best, deepest conversations while you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So to get out and go and walk and have, I think it was great during COVID because you had nothing else to do except
you could just walk.
You could go and walk, and you could. I think you got away with saying, hey, we're going to have this call. Yeah. Can we do it while on the phone? I'm going to wander around the block, or whatever route you were or weren't allowed to walk. Yeah. But I think there is something about, and there is science behind this, and I can't quote it properly, but there is something about when you're walking and talking and you're resolving a problem, because you're shoulder to shoulder with the person.
Yeah, it's less intense.
It's less confrontational, and you're kind of walking together in a direction, and it almost subconsciously signifies that we're on a journey together and we're going to solve something.
Absolutely.
And I don't think you can understate that. It's completely different. Yeah. Once you've done that and you've been in situations where you've tried to have a tough conversation or resolve a problem or even think creatively, and you're like, on a call on Teams with a headset on, they're on a headset on, you're there like trying to focus on a screen versus maybe you're out on a walk, it's a nice day, you're in, maybe you're by the sea or you're walking through and you're having this conversation, you're thinking, it's just completely different. So I really agree, like the walking, talking meeting.
You and I will do that as we go. We'll do it together.
We don't need any excuse.
No, we won't, Just
need a quick chat. Let's go for the golf.
Let's go and have a knock. Yeah.
What other habits have you got then? Is there anything you feel like actually you need to be doing this more in order to be successful over the next couple of years with the business, with life, with family?
It's a really good point. I think probably taking a little bit more time to plan out, not granularly kind of day to day, but I think the nature of being an entrepreneur and being in business is you kind of go with the wind a little bit to a certain extent, especially as a startup and working in a smaller business. I think less so now, but I still have those tendencies to, we have a really good call with an exciting prospect and all of a sudden my mind can go to, okay, we can do this for them and this feature and we can work in this way to satisfy their needs, but it may not align to the kind of overarching strategy of the business. So I think I need to take a little bit more time to think about kind of ongoing direction of travel and where we want to be, as opposed to kind of getting a little bit down in the weeds. And I think I spoke about it earlier about in COVID times, it was very much the next day. I think I've almost come out of that and then gone kind of the other way and actually spending some time focusing on the big picture is at this stage what's really, really useful. I'd like to, as I say, take some more time back to, focus on my family, focus on kind of growth in that sense, away from the business side. Yeah. Focus on kind of physical and mental well-being, as well as kind of the direction of travel of, we need to grow this business and we need to commercialize and we need to get more sales and we need to get more clients. And we absolutely do need to do all of those things, right? And I'm fully committed to doing that. But I think in this world that we're in and the kind of the workforce that is around us and especially in our generation, I think being in tune with your mental well-being and different stress factors and different stress indicators that are having a knock-on effect on your performance is really important. And I think it's being spoke about now more than ever. And I think even if we go back to the beginning of my journey with Suada, like, I didn't know what stress indicators that were affecting my mental health even were. I had no idea. I think it's more accessible now, and I think we can understand when we're primed to perform versus when we need to have a quieter day, or we need to spend the morning, you know, just with our headphones in, doing a piece of admin work, and we don't need to be on calls constantly. I think there's a tendency to be busy for the sake of being busy, have meetings for the sake of having meetings, when actually sometimes we need to just pull back. Sometimes we need to just focus on ourselves and do something, internalize for a little bit. You know what I mean?
There is a beauty of, so I've done both. I've done corporate, you know, for FTSE 100 companies, and now kind of done startup or doing startup, very much doing startup.
Very much doing it, yeah.
And there is something beautiful about being outside of that corporate space where there is an expectation to be in for certain hours. Yeah. You know, meetings, generally speaking, must be called. Like you might, you know, like there's a lot of good stuff in that. Like there's a really good thing about routine, structure, like, and also you just, sometimes you need that in order to know, well, I've got to get work done with my team. We're available between these hours. There is something beautiful in startup where you get to, with your team, like decide how do we want to plan our week and how do we work best, and actually do we want to be early morning, late, you know, like. And there is something really special about being able to go, do you know what? Like, I'm really great between the hours of 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. Yeah. And then I'm useless between the hours of midday and 2. And then I get a fresh wind at, you know, 6 p.m. or maybe after the kids go to bed or whatever. Totally. And like the ability to go, like, I just need to go out and go to the gym or go for a walk, or actually I'm going to go and see my mate for coffee, and then I'm going to come back, and, you know, that's a really, I think if you are in a corporate, it, right? That's the beauty. And if you're in a corporate space, or if you work for a large company, you kind of want to be having those conversations with your team and with your managers and doing the best that you can within the confines of what works.
Sure. It feels far away, right, in the corporate world.
I mean, but I think a lot of people that I would commend who I know in the corporate space who either have that environment where they can do that, or leaders I know, managers I know, friends who encourage and foster that kind of environment. You know, I was really lucky. Like, guy I used to work for at Vodafone, good friend of mine. He was brilliant, like absolutely brilliant at encouraging and enabling. Like, you work in the structure and you work in the way that works best for you. Again, outcome focused, outcome orientated. That's a real skill in itself. Like, if you can't do that, then
it's tough.
You will just, if you can't measure out, if you can't understand, measure, define outcomes, you will just naturally resort to output. And then output becomes hours at the desk, number of meetings sat in,
calls been on,
how many Jira tickets have I moved across? You know, so like, don't be wrong, that you have to get that prerequisite in there first in terms of outcomes. But then, you know, if you can do that, brilliant. And
KPIs don't have to be measured in outcomes like that, do they? You know, like, as you say, Jira tickets moves or whatever it is, like, that's not how we measure performance. It's not how we need to measure performance. And of course, in startups and you know, in your own businesses, you have a lot more flexibility rather than kind of the rigid structure of a lot of big corporates. But I think that you're absolutely right. It is something that when we have those moments and we get the opportunity to do that, it does fill you. It's very inspirational, isn't it? It again fills me with a lot of pride that we're able to say, you know, we're going to take the team out and we're going to take them on a Christmas do, and we're going to go to Amsterdam with the guys. And, you know, we were fortunate enough to do that this year. A lot of our developers in Tbilisi, our team over there, had never left the country. They never even have a passport. A couple of them had to get passports for their first kind of away day with Suada, and doing some of these things is really inspiring. I get so much good feeling out of that. And ultimately giving back, right? You know, we know that, you know, and I'll talk a little bit about the development team very quickly, because they are genuinely some of the hardest working people I've ever met. They're based in Tbilisi in Georgia. And Tbilisi in Georgia is genuinely one of the most beautiful places I've ever been.
You said it's a real hub for tech talent.
It is such a hub for tech talent. The gene pool of individuals in Tbilisi, they are some of the most educated, you know, brilliant engineers and software developers that I've known and that I've worked with. But what really always surprises me is how hard they work. You know, they are 4 hours ahead of us most of the year, and they work to a Western clock. So it can be 1, 2 a.m. with them, and I'm pinging them a message at kind of 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock our time saying, hey guys, we need this fixed for the presentation tomorrow. And they're up and they're on it. And it's so commendable, and it really motivates me to keep driving the business forward and wanting to incentivize them to be loyal to us and to stick with us and to be on this journey with us. And when we can do these things, like we go out to see them in Tbilisi, Dave and I, or when we take them on a trip away, and that is so much internal motivation for growing the business, is to be able to do that for more people. Genuinely it is. And some of the guys that come to us straight out of school, we got a guy in particular who spoke very little English, came straight from university, has been with us 4-5 years nearly now, and speaks the most beautiful Queen's English and responds to emails like nobody's business, like that. In he's just incredible.
Yeah.
And it's so motivating to see progress of your staff as well as progress of the business. And I think that's something I'm learning as a founder, is how do we give these guys the best opportunity to flourish? Because I remember when I was their age and all I wanted was a track to run on and someone to guide me. I wanted a Dave Thompson as a mentor. I wanted someone to look up to and to be inspired, and I still absolutely do. But hopefully now we can do that to inspire the next generation of employees that are coming through.
Yeah, that's awesome. So MOLT is all about shedding what's dead to make space for growth, make space for adaptability, being new and alive. The question I want to finish on is, what is something significant that you've changed your mind about recently?
That is a very good question. I bet that gets people in interviews, doesn't it? Yeah. I bet you've had all manner of answers.
Yeah.
Something significant that I've changed my mind on recently. Little bit left field, little bit kind of away from the business chat, but you can see I'm wearing a Whoop.
Yeah.
So I've actually started taking a little bit more time to focus on my sleep and to focus on the outcomes of having good sleep. And I was very young, and kind of when I was growing up, I was always someone like, sleep doesn't matter, I can stay up late and wake up early and I'll be fine. But recently I've done a complete U-turn on sleep and the importance of really healthy, good sleep. So I've started I listened to a podcast like a lot of people did, and it was a guy talking about the importance of sleep and why, as a business founder and as a kind of highly active and busy person, it's so important to get restorative sleep, as opposed to just kind of surface level, you get your head down for a couple of hours and you go again. And I fell into a little bit of that trap of I was always waking up really early and kind of getting to work straight away. The guys are 4 hours ahead, as I said, so I can wake up at 5-6 and get to work, sit at the desk at 5:30 and not stop until the evening, and then really drain myself out. So I bought the Whoop, and I've really started focusing on how do I make sure that I maximize my sleep and actually, as I say, going to bed early and still waking up nice and early, but making sure that I actually prioritize sleep. I always prioritize, as I say, my business, spending time with my other half, going on walk. There's loads of things that I've prioritized, my fitness goals, but now I'm starting to prioritize sleep. And I would have told you I would have never been interested. I've completely changed my mind on this. I genuinely feel like I'm getting old. I feel like my old man. I've now decided that at this stage of my life, I'm going to prioritize my sleep.
Yeah.
So that is probably the most boring old man answer you could probably get to something that I've changed my mind and probably has kind of underwhelmed you in terms of the answer.
You're well into your 30s, but you suddenly get into running, you monitor your sleep.
Golf.
Or you change your dietary habits.
We are a stereotypical
there we go.
30s blokes. Yeah.
Well, that's quite a nice round to where we started off, which was talking about how we're going to sleep in this 30-odd degree weather. So I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up. Lou, thank you so much for coming on.
Mate, I've loved it. Really good chat. It's been good fun.
I'm really grateful to be working with you. I'm very inspired by your work ethic.
Thank you.
I love problem solving with you. It's just so much fun working with mates. So thank you for coming on. That was a good chat. It's been great.
Enjoyed it. Thank you, bro.